Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another of our Webinar Wednesdays. So welcome everyone to number 67, off to a rocky start today. A little locked up at the very beginning. Bolted out a PowerPoint as we usually have our PowerPoint slide up. Technical issues abound, but we'll get through this and we'll get it going, get our shares working again and get this thing going again and figure it out for next time. So good afternoon, I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield, CSUB SBDC as we're known as, the Small Business Development Center. And we are in all 50 states, the SBDC program on a national level. A lot of these programs come to you frequently through counseling, through training, through a lot of different programs. So please bear with me as I try to get Mr. PowerPoint back working again. Did have that issue with freezing up on me at the beginning, but we're going to work through that and get going through this PowerPoint presentation and what we're doing. So it's great to be here for number 67. We've been doing this for quite a while. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and going through some of the history related to it. And we're also going to be looking at, potentially even other things too, such as the new child care credit. We're going to do a little deeper dive into some of the other things as well, and look into some of the tools that are available and look at the pandemic programs, and really look forward to next week when we have great guests coming in to talk about actually, the economy, the state of the economy. And so we'll be shifting bases and moving toward an economy that we've never really seen before, coming out of the pandemic and actually getting going into some economic rebuilding. But that's next week. So let's hopefully get this thing going pretty soon, get this share working again and kind of try to do a new share here for you. See if it's going to work for us now. And like it's known to do, occasionally it cooperates. So there we go. This is what we're getting today, apparently. So again, Webinar Wednesday. As you know, we're part of the nationwide SBDC program. Regionally, we're part of the Central California Network. Central California, including 14 counties that go across the board, crossed from the top up to Mono County to the bottom of Kern, and through a lot of different places, the Pacific Ocean to the state of Nevada, 14 of the best counties you'll ever find. I'd like to thank our sponsors again this week for participating. And we have a lot of stuff that's new this week, that's new today on actually the 23rd of June. So bear with me just a second, please. I hope to have this thing working momentarily. See. And not getting any support out of PowerPoint today. So I'm trusting, and please use your chat, I'm trusting you can see the PowerPoint that's kind of on the slide and kind of not. And we are frozen up on that puppy right now. 67 pandemic relief webinars never been frozen up, or have been frozen up but been able to get around it. So keep trying here, try to figure out what our conflict is for next week. I'm having a feeling it's my audio app that reduces sound, but that's another story. Okay, so right now I'm trusting, since we're going to be talking about the RRF, and we've done this in the past where we've been able to do this, I want to share with you, at least starting off, a new tool that we've seen. And this is a tool that's put out. I'm not going to share it with you. You need to go either to the National Restaurant Association or the Association of Independent CPAs that put out this little tool for tracking expenses for your restaurant revitalization grant. And the Restaurant Revitalization Fund is going through a lot of things that we're going to be discussing today, a lot of changes, a lot of turmoil, a lot of problems and other issues. But then again, you talk to somebody like I did today who signed up for it back on early May and was funded 4 days later. but we'll get into the problems that we see there. But right now, let's kind of just glance at this tool that you can go access from, and I will put a link in to these particular sites so you can go get it from their source. One thing I have mentioned during this 2021 version of PPP and the pandemic relief programs, and I'll never get tired of doing it, is what a great job trade associations have done stepping up and really helping their memberships in a wide range of industries. And I think this is a great example of that. So there you see the summary, and we have an expense tracker here to where you can put in a lot of stuff, because remember, we need to track expenses for all of our pandemic relief programs and make sure that we don't duplicate in case we are asked as an audit or reviewing those expenditures. And the thing that's unique about the RRW or RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, is that it will have a portal that SBA has for those grantees to where you go in and put in your expenses at the end. Something that you didn't do with PPP if you received it. Something you didn't do with the California Relief Grant Program and many others. So that is something that we're going to really, this is kind of a spreadsheet that reflects their understanding of the program in mid-May, and also shows some of these expense categories. But by the nature of this program, that you do have to go in and list the expenditures in the portal, in the RRV portal at the very end, in the RRF portal, then this is really important that you do that. Okay, so kind of going in that direction, let's see if Mr. PowerPoint wants to cooperate, or if wants to kind of continue this little problem that we have, and apparently they do. So apparently we're back on this right now. I'm going to shift bases here in a second and go to some of the websites that we were planning on going over, and kind of going back and forth on some of these. Let's jump into this right now and do a reshare, resuming the share. Again, I apologize for the technical issues that we've had. It has been a significant amount of time, and we will work through that today. So there. Now, jumping into some of the other things that we have available that we can actually see through this today, and as we are now sharing the screen for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So this is from the National Restaurant Association, and this is going to be a big part of our presentation today. Also, you will see that there's the expense tracker that you can go get, and I downloaded right there. A lot of other questions related to this particular program. The program, as you know, is running through issues with a lawsuit. And so just working not off my slides today, apparently, the RRF ran into a number of different programs or lawsuits in the state of Texas and Tennessee. There were two lawsuits in northern Texas, one in Tennessee, that found the practice of actually limiting the participants based on gender and ethnicity to being unconstitutional or discriminatory, one of the two. And so therefore has caused a problem, and it really caused a problem for a number of people that were already funded. So the IRS, or excuse me, the SBA had to send out information to a number of these individuals. They did it via email, and we'll shift over to that in just a second, but actually sent an email to 2,985 individual businesses that were already funded that they were no longer going to be funded. So as we continue to maneuver on the fly today, let's go up here and look at this notice that was sent out via email from the SBA. And it was due to the recent court that they were not able to distribute or disperse their RRF award. Now, I haven't heard of anybody of those 2,965, but if there's 2,965, generally we run about 25% of the awards go to California businesses. So that would be somewhere between 60 and 75 California restaurants have been notified that they were approved, that the funding was imminent, and then received this email after the lawsuit, which really led to no other course of action by the SBA. One thing the SBA has is they have plenty of attorneys, and I'm sure that once these legal conclusions came down, of which probably I would assume would be appealed, um, then as far as that, we find out that the SBA leadership is frustrated with the outcome and remains committed to getting everything done. So it does not affect those that were previously funded. If you've already been funded, you do not have to return the money. But the lawsuit basically said at this point moving forward that you're going to have to stop right now funding particular loans. And then it's going to go back apparently to a process to where it is first come, first serve. So that is what we are learning right now and what is coming out of the Restaurant Revitalization Fund because of the lawsuit and because of a number of other things. Now, I was going to share with you a lot of the facts and everything, but let's kind of stick in the RRF mode right now. So we looked at this one as far as the FAQs. There's some good FAQs in here that you can go to as well. They have a nice also next steps on if your business has been funded. And it gives you, of course, retain all records until submitted and a lot of other information and protect your SBA account information. You have to plan, and we've talked about this a number of times on the previous 66 webinar Wednesdays on the pandemic relief, is planning on spending those grant funds on eligible expenses. The key thing I like that they put in here is the RRF is not a economic stimulus payment. So it is not something that where the economic stimulus, you could take it out and buy something that is not an eligible use for individuals. And we saw that with, I think, a lot of the big money ticket purchases, the big ticket purchases. We saw that moving forward, but now it's not an economic stimulus and you have to spend it on the eligible expenditures. So remember what the covered period is and map out the covered period. And the covered period timeline of March 15th, 2020 to March 11th, 2023 gives you ample time to spend your RRF grant funds. So they offer a few more tips there is if, remember the debt service, the grant for business debt service. Can be used for principal and interest, and it cannot be used for making principal only payments into the future. Another thing that if you had any past due expenditures, those seem to fit within that as well. So if you were impacted by any past due expenditures, they're eligible if they incurred before that time period. So as we continue on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund grant, they talk about a little bit about upcoming tax filings, which is going to be a big question. And I think we're still going to see some guidance on the RRF. A lot of it has been done. A lot of it's going to be determined because now we have a court case that's drastically impacted SBA's ability to deliver the program as they anticipated. So whereas we had a program with the RRF that was really moving along nicely, the portal was easy to use. People were happy to jump in and get in there for 20 minutes and get their applications in. They were then actually, if they weren't already funded, now they are in a state of flux like so many other people. In going and trying to find data on how much has been funded, there were some early numbers that were put out, but it is really hard. I haven't been able to get the exact number about how many loans are made and how much money is outstanding at this time and how much remains. Now, one of the things that, as we move down some of these, frequently asked questions and things like that, and there's the list of the eligible expenses that they can be spent on. We covered a lot of the eligible expenses leading up to the actual May 3rd opening of the portal for eligible restaurants and other types of businesses. So, moving forward on this is I guess it's going to be something, if you have a loan that's in process in this, I would continue to visit the portal. I would go there and I would find, what is actually happening in that portal. You are notified a lot of information in the portal. And unfortunately, if you received one of those emails, My apologies for that. I can't even grasp how it might feel to actually go through this process, going through, doing the application, getting approved, saying you're going to be funded, and then get a letter saying you're not going to be funded. It's absolutely brutal. So, but that's where we are right now with a lot of this. And let's see what else we got on this particular subject. So now coming with that, we'll see some of the numbers here. You see that we had about 362,000 businesses. They were beyond restaurants, they were bakeries, they were beverage establishments, etc. But more than 362,000 restaurants applied for over 75 billion in RRF grants. So we only had 28 billion to begin with. So we knew there was going to be a shortfall. Right now, it is anticipated that the shortfall is between 50 and 60 billion. There is a bipartisan effort going on in Congress, in both the House and Senate, in order to add more funds to this particular program. Knowing that restaurants, there was a tremendous need based on a lot of what was happening. And so based on the need and based on other things that were out there, restaurants were really one of the small mom and pop restaurants up to restaurants that could get $10 billion through this. $10 million. It's hard to say 10 million now with all the billions we keep throwing around, but up to $10 million, the larger restaurants. So all this is kind of up in the air right now. And it's part of the lobbying efforts. Here's what the National Restaurant Association did send to, as far as an advocate for restaurants, they did send this to Isabel Guzman, the administrator of SBA. So that is where the process is now. It's trying to lobby and to try to find support for additional funds for this. That might help those 2,965, but also it's leaving billions and billions of others that applied for this program out in the cold as well. So I wished I had more, and I did have more. I had more on my slides, and we'll try to get to some of those in just a few minutes. So that is really kind of where the Restaurant Revitalization Program is. So let's jump around a little bit right now and maybe see if but apparently it doesn't even like me to close it. So can't even force close the PowerPoint, but let's jump into something right now. And I remember the days when I used to print out a copy of my slides just in case this happened. But hey, technology never fails, does it? So winging it best on what is on my slides, moving on down through the presentation, of which there were 32 of them, as you might see at the bottom. We had a lot on the Restaurant Revitalization Program. We're going to talk also today about the child care credit. The child care credit was a credit, and I'm not even going to jump into the polls today. We'll save the poll questions for next week. But the child care credit is something that is timely, and it is happening right now. Essentially, maybe we can do a share to where we kind of look at, kind of back to this and try to find, we can do something with the child care credit. Well, these are harsh measures. So let's see what we can just Google and pull up really quick. Try to find, okay, so here we go. Advanced child care tax credits for 2021. So the thing that's unique about 2021 is that, and this applies only to the tax year 2021, is that like the ERTC, the Employer Retention Tax Credit, this can be a refundable credit on a monthly basis to individuals. The child care credit actually is far more lucrative than it has been in past years, but you don't even have to wait for it. So normally on a tax credit is you would actually, basically incur this year, file for your taxes in 2022 based on your 2021 filing and filing status. And on your taxes, you would receive a tax credit against taxes that you paid and possibly even generate a tax refund for you. So what's different this year is that the tax payments are advanced child tax credits that will pay individuals and up to a certain limit. So there's a limit on this of, I believe it's up to $75,000 for individuals, $150,000 for married filing joint couples. And what you can do is you can actually get the advanced tax credit based on that. Now, of course, as we have said in the past, oftentimes with these programs, the devil is in the details. And I know that there's going to be some more child tax credit links in the chat. But as you see, it's the really good program because, we talked a little bit about the stimulus payments and the individual stimulus payments. And I'm sure next week with our economist on here and a PowerPoint that's working, we'll talk a lot about actually what is actually happening in that particular area. But what also is going to be important is this is going to put additional money in the hands of individuals that have children under the age of 17 or under 18. So as you see here, to qualify, you have to have filed a tax return in 19 or 20. You have to give information in 2020 to receive the economic impact payment. You have to maintain a home in the United States for more than half of the year. And that includes 50 states and District and Columbia. Qualified child is under 18 at the end of 2021 and has a valid Social Security number. And again, there are certain income limits that I think I just discussed. So that's the child care credit. Had a lot more to discuss on this and a lot more ways to take advantage of this and how it could be beneficial, but those are on PowerPoint slides. So let me try one more thing here. Because I'm kind of stubborn, and when I keep trying to get this PowerPoint to go, it won't. So let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about shuttered venues. Shuttered venues is moving along at really a slow pace. I was unable to attend because of a conflict my regularly scheduled Thursday morning chat with the shuttered venue operator grants individuals at SBA and DC. Now, if anybody has a question, please put that or email it directly to me as I plan on attending tomorrow. The number of shuttered venue grants is still very small that has gotten out there. And again, for as easy and efficient the Restaurant Revitalization Fund was, unfortunately, the shuttered venue operators grant was about the opposite. It was complex, it was difficult. Apparently it was that way because of the way that it was written. And apparently it was written into law initially to try to provide the greatest relief for these shuttered venue operators grants. And in actuality now, it appears that because of the tightness of the legislation and the inability of wiggle room, it has made it far more difficult to get the money out. The one thing that is new that SBA does have, and one thing that I want to share, is they have a post-application FAQ if you did apply for the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program. So it has been updated as of May 26th. It's only about 3 pages, but it provides you information that is really helpful in kind of getting through this. And there's a great deal of frustration from individuals that have applied. And I've been experiencing that because with so many of the programs that we find right now, with some of the EIDL programs and the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, according to reported published releases online, was part of the EIDL program. But with EIDL, is that running into a lot of the areas and a lot of the issues in obtaining actually that review process. And so it's the review process that is hurting everybody and keeping everything down on this and in some of the EIDL programs. Okay, so PPP. So try one more. I'm going to try again, but with PPP, what a few things we want to share here is that I guess you're still seeing that, and I still can't go any part past that frozen part. Boy, I'm stubborn. But anyway, back to our webinar. The PPP and sharing this PPP information for you, moving on to it. There we go. There's your loans and other stuff, but I really wanted to share with you today, we're kind of where we have been in the past with the forgiveness data. And forgiveness data is right here as of May 24th, hasn't really changed in a month, but these are for the 2020s. Now, the big issue on forgiveness, when we were going to discuss it in much greater detail than unfortunately I'm able to today, is that what we're seeing is a lot of things that are now starting to come due. We're starting to see the 10-month window that you had as a 2020 PPP forgiveness, that it is now actually coming due. So, and we're getting even more lockups. Okay, well, I appreciate you bearing with me today. I know this is not what either of us expected, but on the PPP forgiveness, we'll see that, that under review is, the wonderful under review is 81.5 billion. And the total applications as far as all data is they have received over 3.3 that have been totally forgiven. And they have not received 1.7. Now, the key thing I want to share with you right now on this particular aspect is that for very early PPPs, you're starting to get close. For example, I believe my example was if you received a PPP on April the 12th, 2020, what you would do is you would definitely want to elect the 24-week covered period because you haven't had forgiveness yet, and that extends out that 10-month period to the end of that 24 weeks. It's bringing you to around the 26th of July. So we're now within about 4 weeks from the very earliest of the PPPs. And remember, without that, you really have a loan. And the PPP is really designed to be a forgivable loan. But if you don't go through the forgivable process and actually have it forgiven, you really have to go through that and do that. Now, with the PPP, the one thing that we have for forgiveness, and I know many of you have gone through the process, is that you really need to contact your lender. It really starts with your lender. The lender actually takes the information that you applied. With the 150,000 and less, it's incredibly easy. It's way easier. It's way easier than this, I'll bet. It's way easier than the regular 3508, which you see as a 13-page report. So you see the page 3508, and this is for those that are over 150. And so if you have over 150, this is maybe a form that you will have to use. Now, the one thing about it is that SBA has come out and said that they are looking for PPP forgiveness over 150 to actually improve one of the forms. I believe it's the 3508EZ, and make that process easier. But right now, this is what we have. But really, the timeline and really working with your lender is where you need to be. If it's 150 and under, you can use the other form, which is the PPP 3508S, which only requires you to do some quick calculations, have your paperwork handy, and you don't even need to upload a lot of that paperwork, but you really need to go through that process in order to sign off that you are having 60% of your PPP that is on payroll, and then the other 40%, and it could be greater than 60%, or other 40% that is on other expenditures that are eligible expenditures. Now, the one thing you really need to make sure that you get everything done correctly on that PPP1 is because if you recall with PPP2, and really, you know, one of the worst situations that we are seeing is that those that received a PPP1 loan in 2020 and were unable to open their businesses and spend their funds, and therefore were told that they could not get a second draw PPP. So with that information moving forward, it's really important that your 2020 PPP does have the eligible expenditures, does have them used in the right category, particularly if you said that you had done that already when applying for a second draw. Boy, I do remember a little of the stuff on those slides, don't I? I have to make one last attempt in order to try to get this thing to forcefully close. And, you know, stubborn. And plenty of good more information. Really like the information on these little slides here, but apparently it's not going to happen. So, well, what else do we have up here? Oh, we have some idle reports, but do we really want to go over those? And I apologize. What I will try to do is to redo this potentially, or get more information out once we get past this technical issue. But with the technical issue, I think what we're going to do is we're going to open up early to question and answer. And I don't see any there right now. I'm going into the chat box and going into chat. Not a lot of fun with technical issues, I'm finding out. And jumping into our chat box, we're seeing that our producer, Maureen, has in here links for the 2021 child tax credit. Tips moving forward on the restaurant.org that we shared. Some of the other relief fund expenditure tracker and where you can obtain that. And got a question in here. Let's jump to a question. Is the loan to grant program still available? My understanding is, the last I had heard, the Bakersfield loan to grant program, which is that $2,500 per job, whereas if you're in business for over a year, is still up and going. But I believe they had a lot of loans in the pipeline, and I'm not certain on that, but I would contact Access Plus Capital, contact Eddie Palomar, Access Plus Capital, and check with him and see if it's still going. Or you can check online with the city of Bakersfield. So some of the other things on the slide, that kind of reminds me of kind of just going through our usual pandemic update, and I'll do the best if I can without having the slide in front of me. But on that, as you know, we generally would talk about PPP, and PPP is closed. And right now we're suggesting people to spend the money in the eligible areas and then prepare for forgiveness. If you have a first draw from 2020, your focus needs to be on forgiveness if that hasn't happened. If it has, forgiveness on 2021 will become an issue later this summer and maybe even into fall as we get through a lot of these other pressing issues that are happening at SBA. Moving on down that particular list from that, we also talked about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. A lot of things going on with EIDL and still with EIDL reconsideration. We haven't mentioned much about EIDL today, but let's talk quickly about EIDL, and there are remedies. And I know in the portal, and a lot of you have been going through a variety of the EIDL products. We have EIDL loans that people are trying to get, that the portal is still open. The SBA disaster loan portal is still open for economic injury disaster loans. We also know that there's a number of other, such as the targeted EIDL advance, and people are working through some issues on that particular program. Then we jump into the supplemental, the targeted supplemental EIDL program, which is the $5,000 if you were able to get the targeted advance EIDL, which means you were in a lower income area and had a 30% or more drop over 8 weeks. So those programs, and there is a reconsideration process for many of these programs. Maybe if Maureen can find those and put those in there, some of the EIDL stuff that we've put in basically for the last couple of months, but are still really pertinent and really valuable. One of the things that I think I talked about last week was just calling the EIDL toll-free number, the 800 number. And that is the same number that is actually being used for shuttered venues if you're in the review process. So if you have a shuttered venue that you applied for on the first day it opened, and all you continue to see several weeks later is in review, you know, it doesn't hurt to be able to, doesn't hurt to call that EIDL 800 number. The SBA disaster loan number, last time I was with a client and called it, went very, very quickly. So we have reconsiderations that are open there. We also have an email that you can send to increase the amount of your EIDL. Now, the one thing I don't know what's going on here is if increases in the EIDL are going to bring about a closure to the EIDL program sooner than the December 31st, 2021 date. So we do have, it looked like last time we looked, a considerable amount of money available, but you're starting to see a lot of those EIDL loans increase from 150,000 up to 500,000. So do have a lot going on in EIDL. EIDL, the SBA disaster loan program, likewise are sufficiently slammed. They're whelmed. I won't call them overwhelmed, but they are significantly whelmed. So, and they continue to do so. So a lot of what I guess I'm talking about with no slides today is patience. Something I didn't have a lot of today, but really it's about all we got working for us right now is a lot of patience, because we have a restaurant fund program that is in flux because of a lawsuit and changes to it. We have a proposal to try to fund it to a greater extent by another $60 billion, which would basically bring most people in who applied for that particular program. Given the nature of politics in Washington, I really don't know on that, but there's a lot of people that are kind of out there kind of holding the bag, so to speak, right now, waiting to see what happens. And all I can do is ask you to please be patient. I know a number of you have already received the funding for the Restaurant Revitalization Program, and the tracker tool and some of the other things that you need to do are available for you. But really, patience is really something that I think that a lot of us are going to have with some of the processes that are going on. Again, if anybody has a question for shuttered venues, I've been in touch with the handful of individuals who I know who have applied for that. I'm hoping that we have some answers on it for tomorrow. I know next week that we're going to really be on a great subject and something I'm really excited about. We're going to have Dr. S. Aaron Hedgay, who is the department head for the Department of Economics within the School of Business and Public Administration at CSUB. And we're going to have Emeritus Professor, former Associate Dean of the School of Business and Public Administration, Dr. Mark Evans. And we're going to be talking a lot about not broken PowerPoints, but we're going to be talking a lot about a lot of the changes that are happening and that are going on right now. Starting to read a lot about this is going to be a recovery unlike any other. There are things happening already in this recovery that we're starting to see that are going to be addressed next week. And we're going to be allowing plenty of time for them to talk about some of the key economic issues that are driving us today, such as inflation, with all this money floating around and inflation starting to increase substantially. We're going to talk about a lot of the issues that we talked about last week as far as jobs and what is being done on the jobs front and creating jobs and some of the issues that are related to that. But many of the other economic issues that are facing our country during this recovery are going to be addressed as well. As we get into looking at, well, gee, I read something recently that Medicare, that there are more individuals that are actually signed up for Medicare, I believe since 2006, the biggest increase. And then when we get into our own small business and how the recovery and how coming out of COVID and a post-COVID economy and what it's going to look like, is we saw just a wave of small businesses close because of COVID. And then yet conflicting, we saw a surge, a large amount of startups. And something that we really saw at the SBDC, the phenomenon really start toward the beginning of this year, or possibly even later in last year, where we started seeing so many people wanting to start a business even during this time of economic uncertainty and other issues. So we will have a great deal on discussion on economics next week and moving forward. Again, I apologize for our technical issues today with the PowerPoint. Got through a lot of the things that I know I wanted to discuss, and many things that we did not, but I guess this is what it takes to get me done before 1 o'clock. Any other questions? I'll check the question and answers and anything else. If anybody has also the chat box for any other questions. And yeah, I know you could, for a while, you could see the slides, but I could not advance them or get them to do anything other than show the one slide. So that was our issue, as PowerPoint froze up on me today. And just another reason of, another example of death by PowerPoint. Okay, we'll be back next week for number 68. Most likely without any technical issues. We've gone through our biggest technical issue in 67 this week. So everybody stay cool with the week coming ahead with the hot weather. Everybody, hope to see you back next week. And for our producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, I'm Kelly Bearden. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.